Hi, it's Charlotte, and in today's video I'm going to be talking you through 20 of the most anticipated books for spooky season for me this year. They're a mix of horror, thriller, a little bit of fantasy. I've got some non-fiction, some novellas, some YA, and about 8 or 9 novels that I actually intend to read during the months of September and October. Spooky season starts for me, I would say, the first week of September, and I appreciate that's probably a touch premature for some people, but you've got to make the most of it. So I hope you grab yourself a nice drink, a cup of tea, something to keep you company while you watch this video, and I really hope it gives you a good couple of recommendations for your reading throughout spooky season. If you hear any strange noises or sound like a furry cannonball ricocheting around the house, that is my puppy who has got zoomies currently and doesn't seem to be abating anytime soon. The first book that I wanted to read this spooky season was Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. This is also the same author who wrote Bird Box, and I only read that I think within the last year, and I was really looking forward to reading something else by him. I had seen a number of read-throughs already of this work by a couple of American booktube girlies and also on Book Talk, and I couldn't wait to read it. This is a horror mystery, a tiny bit of mystery, paranormal horror thriller type book, and it's told through the eyes and experience of a very young child. It's also stylistically written from the viewpoint of the child, and that made for a very unique reading experience. I genuinely found this very scary. I found it discomforting to actually read at nighttime, and there are a couple of days where I made sure I didn't read it right before I fell asleep because it really spooked me out. There were a couple of things plot-wise that I didn't enjoy, which is why I won't share what those are, but I gave this a solid 3 stars, 3.75. I think it would have been a 4, but I found it was very much plot-driven rather than character-led, or very little character development. All of them seemed to be the same person to me as I was reading it. It was quite two-dimensional in that sense, but it really freaked me out. The creature, the monsters that are in it, The next book I'm really looking forward to reading is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. The combination of that title, the artwork, knowing who he is as a horror writer, I just thought the whole thing just looked sublime. My understanding of this book is that it is about a female horror buff. She's the lead protagonist, and within the small town that she lives in, murders and certain atrocities start to happen, and I think she starts to piece together that she's actually in her own, or the town itself is in a slasher movie. And I think it's drawing on a lot of traditional horror tropes and things that go with slasher movies, and they're one of my favourite types of spooky movie or horror movie just to watch. So that in book form, but also that as a narrative device, I thought sounded so cool. And I'd also read The Only Good Indians, also by Stephen Graham Jones, and that gave me a real flavour for his type and style of work, and that made me want to pick up more of his stuff to read. Graham Jones is also a Native American writer, and I think that informs a lot of the type of books that he writes and his style and what he brings to a horror work. And I know I've only read one of his books, but I found his voice very unique within the horror genre itself. So I'm really looking forward to picking this up. Next book I want to read this Halloween is Supplication. This was sold to me on BookTube as being a creepy, weird, literary fiction, but literary horror. And I thought that sounds perfect. I've talked about this in a couple of other my videos when I got given this for my birthday, and everything about it looks fantastic, but the actual ratings that I've since seen on Goodreads is probably one of the lowest I've seen, and that was a 2.7. So I'm hoping that it's not just a gorgeous outline. I'm hoping the content is more than a 2.7. Then you're gonna give it a try, because what initially intrigued me about it still stands, and I want to see why it's perhaps not matching up to the ratings, or why it's being given this rating in particular. Like, even if it's atrocious, I'm still curious to find out why. The next novel that I want to read this season is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. The copy that I've ordered is a really nice cover. It doesn't look like some of the American designs that I've seen. It's got a really textured red paper with sprayed edges on the book, and it's got a really nice dust jacket, so I'm looking forward to that. Really looking forward to reading something by him. Paul Tremblay is someone I see constantly referred to in the kind of sub-community of like horror readers and things on BookTube. I heard about this book is that it is a cursed movie that is being remade into a modern adaptation or a remake, and the original movie has kind of gained a dark cult kind of following. And as they start to create this new adaptation, some of the original actors are involved, but then certain things in the script start to happen in real life, and those obviously have devastating consequences because it is a horror film. Another book I'm really looking forward to getting to this season is Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. The blurb for this sounds bananas. It says, "The Princess Diaries meets Dante's Inferno, the most enjoying and compelling horror novel you'll read this year." They are so polarizing. I can't even begin to reconcile how that would. I was gifted this for my birthday, and I've been specifically saving it until this point of the year because I think it's going to be exactly what I want for creepy season. The lead female in this goes back to her family home. I think it's a farm. There's a wedding. There's like family reunions and things going on, but something doesn't seem right. I've heard it's a horror mystery with a little bit of a thriller aspect to it, and it is meant to be brooding and kind of sinister. The blurb for this says, "Vesper's homecoming exhumes a terrifying secret. She's forced to reckon with her family's beliefs and her own crisis of faith in this fiery, irreverent horror novel." So also I think, I don't know if her family are quite religious or there's a sort of religious cult overtones. There's a reason that she had to escape her family and then hasn't come home for years. So, the next book I want to read is Dead Silence. As this is a sci-fi horror, I thought that would make a change in the genres of books that I would be reading this season, because a lot were or are going to be straight up spooky, paranormal, creepy houses, and I thought having a sci-fi spaceship horror would be a good way to kind of change that up a little bit. This book is essentially about a salvage crew deep in space who pick up a distress signal and decide to go check it out. There's other worse things that start obviously happening to them, and from what I could gather, it was giving me Prometheus, Aliens, a little bit of Event Horizon vibes, which are terrifying movies, so I obviously wanted to read this season. The next book I want to read is Stephen King's It. I've got my copy here. It's about 1,300 pages, so I don't know if my attention span can stick with a book that long, because that will be the longest book I've ever read. And I said to myself, if I could read approximately 30 pages a day for the next 2 months, then I would be able to get through it without feeling discouraged if I wasn't making enough progress in enough time. I've tried reading it before and I've barely got through the first quarter of it, and this season I'm feeling confident that I can get through those 1,300 pages. I think the longest book I've ever read was actually another Stephen King book, and it was a collection of short stories of his, and that was about 850, and that is the longest book I've ever read, and this is a marathon of a text, so I'm looking forward to reading it though. I won't bother telling you what it's about. I feel like at this point everyone already knows. The next book is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I've got this on Kindle, and this is another one that I have sat on and saved, so that it is perfect time in October to read it, because I think spooky house and Grady Hendrix and super Halloween-y vibes are just the perfect combination. This is marketed as a haunted house type thriller. Perfect, like peak October vibes for reading. The characters in it, they go back to their family home and paranormal activity starts to happen, and they're trying to do up the house to sell it, hence the title of the book. And this is the main premise of the novel, and I know nothing more, and I don't want to know anything more. I very much enjoy Grady Hendrix's books. I find them very easy to read. They're quite playful, they're a little bit camp, they have some sort of self-reflexivity in that they're very aware that they are a horror work, and they play on certain tropes and cliches very well. And I think this is his latest work to have been released. To mix up some of the horrors, I have got 3 thrillers that I want to read that I'll try and intersperse throughout some of the horrors just to break up the first thriller is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. That sounds quite a bit like the Grady Hendrix book I was just talking about. Again, I think it's a sort of paranormal haunted house. I've started reading it, and it's a girl who goes home to her family estate as such, which she doesn't realise they owned, and wants to do it up, sell it and move on, but I'm guessing the house has other plans for her and the entities or whatever reside within its 4 walls. The next 2 thrillers I have are 2 Frida McFadden's. She is such a comfort read to me, very easy, super bingeable. So surprisingly excited to read the 3rd instalment of the Housemaid series. Number 1 was such a wild ride. 2 was fine, but I am still going to gorge myself on the third instalment. I feel like with Frida McFadden, you know what you're going to get when you go into it. And some of the books I'm reading this season, I think, are going to be quite dark, quite heavy going, and this is perfect to punctuate that misery. The other book by Frida McFadden I want to read is called One by One. I've actually got that on Kindle, and I believe it is, as the title says, there's some people who have, I don't know if there's been a car accident or something's gone on, they've been abandoned, and they're in this wood at night time or some town, and they start getting picked off one by one. I appreciate that's the vaguest description, but that was enough for me. And I also saw it was by her, and I think it was only a couple of quid on Kindle, so I bought that and thought, that sounds great. Next, I have, I think, 4 novellas that I want to read. The first one I have on Kindle is Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. The tagline for this is, "In America, demons wear white hoods." My understanding of this work is that it is a historical horror fantasy novella. Is it freedom fighters? Resistance fighters, sorry, I think is the correct word. And they are dismantling and physically going up against members of the Ku Klux Klan. Explore some really dark and violent aspects of that particular period of history. I believe this work is set in the early 1900s. I wasn't sure if it had some post-colonial literary themes in addition to the horror genre, and some of those elements kind of merged together. And I wasn't sure about what the metaphor for the monsters or people that were in this work. The next book I want to read is The Lunchling. This has caught my eye so many times, and I'm so glad that I finally have a copy. 2 parents are trying to get their child to eat their dinner, so they create a little puppet creature called the Lunchling, and this is to help encourage the children to eat their veg, eat their food. And eventually this puppet comes to life, and I think it starts trying to kill their baby, their child, and maybe themselves. And it sounded fun, it sounded playful. I think that artwork with that creepy little demon puppet silhouette thing going on, like, it looks so good and it sounded crazy, so I was really looking forward to. Next horror novella I wanted to read was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. She is a literary fiction writer, and Jackson is very good at creating a sense of dread, and I've heard that this particular work has quite a few psychological twists and turns. I think it's a gothic murder mystery type book. I know that there's a family living in this historic castle, and at some point in the family's history, half of them were poisoned, and the novel kind of picks up at this estate with the remaining family members that have been left. And because this is a classic horror, I really wanted to put it on my list to read this season. I've probably said this about every single book, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's a collection of short stories, all based on or around the day of Halloween. And I just thought, what would be more perfect for October, really, reading Halloween-themed short stories. The book is called Dead Leaves, 8 Tales from the Witching Season, and it's by Keelan Patrick Burke. This is available on Kindle as well, and I thought it didn't seem as heavy going as some of the other horror books that I want to read this season. And the next 2 books I want to read are 2 items of non-fiction that I think are perfect for this time of year. The first is a biography of Poe by Peter Ackroyd. My copy, don't look too closely, is very destroyed. It's a very battered secondhand one I picked up, and I didn't look too closely, and it's destroyed, and there's a lot of foxing and detritus going on with it. But I had read some of Ackroyd's biography of Blake when I was writing a paper on him in uni, and I thought he was phenomenal. He is generally esteemed as one of the greatest living biographers currently, and I wanted to pick this up and read it because I thought, who else would know Poe probably better? And it is a truth universally acknowledged that spooky girls in want of Gothic literature must read biographies of Poe at this time of year. The next book is Fear by Robert Peckham, and a tiny tidbit of trivia about me is that I really like artwork that is to do with plague doctors or that kind of aesthetic, and I thought this cover was exquisite. I originally picked this up for my other half, and he hasn't read it yet, and I think I'm going to beat him to it and actually pick it up this season. I actually thought the blurb for this sounded phenomenal, so I'm just going to read you a couple of sentences. Peckham considers the impact of fear in history as both a coercive tool of power and as a catalyst for social change. Beginning with the Black Death in the 14th century, Peckham traces a shadow history of fear and reveals how fear and panic made us who we are. To break up some of the life-ruining, unsettling and distressing reads, I've got 3 YA books that I also would like to read this season. The first is Miss Peregrine's. I'm really looking forward to starting this series. A lot of people have told me they think I would like this, and this just looks so spooky and perfect for this season. So other than knowing that these are children protected by a Miss Peregrine in a school, and they've all got different abilities and gifts and living together at this school, and I'm guessing some adventures or misdemeanors that happen. Look at these little twins at the back. And then throughout it's just got really lots of photographs. Next YA book is My Sister the Serial Killer. This has been on my TBR I think for a couple of years, and I've not got to it, and I feel like if I don't get to it this spooky season I might just have to give it up. People said it's really sad actually, and quite there was one reading vlog that I watched recently where someone actually DNF'd it, and they were someone whose taste I quite trust when it comes to book reviews, and that's also kind of put me off it. But if you've read this, is it worth it? Do I keep it? Do I give it a try this spooky season? Because the next book, which I also think has one of the greatest, spookiest covers, is Halloween Night by R.L. Stine. I have really been enjoying a YouTuber called Sunnydale Reject, and he, as well as recommending some great American classics and thrillers, he, as a teacher, recommends a lot of good YA books that are spooky and middle grade, and he's just turned me on again to point horror, which I haven't touched these since I was a kid, and he did a really good set of reviews about different Goosebumps series and R.L. Stine works, and his recommendations were so, he had such a passion for them that it really made me reappreciate how much I loved these books as a child. And I believe this is about some friends who decide to put a prank on someone and make it look like they're about to get murdered, and I think a murder actually ends up occurring, I'm not sure. Those are all the books that I'd like to read in September and October. I hope you found a couple of recommendations that you could really enjoy. If there's any that you've already read, please let me know what you think. If you like this video, please do like, comment and subscribe. I will be uploading some more horror and spooky related content as September and October go on. So please stick around and have a great day.